What's up, y'all? Devon here again for Obligatory, bringing you another weekly Friday roundup of music news this week, July 7th, 2023. And this week we only have a few stories to really talk about, but a few I really want to do justice. So bear with me there. And at the end of this video, we will have a list of album announcements and confirmed upcoming albums that are coming soon. But if you want to check that out, please stay tuned. We start with a story that honestly is a bit tough to digest. We have some details and the circumstances surrounding MF Doom and his cause of death. And what we've learned is that MF Doom at the time was okay prior to his sudden deterioration in condition, which was onset by medication given to him by medical staff for a chronic ailment that he had. When MF Doom passed, us as fans really had no idea why, and it isn't until now that it's being made a matter of public record because his wife, Jasmine Dumille, has submitted an inquest to the hospital at which he passed away. He had a severe, and what the hospital said was a rare reaction to this medication that resulted in angioedema. In this inquest, Jasmine has several questions and grievances about a lot of the events leading up to his passing. She claims the conditions of the rooms he was assigned to was not good. The level of attention and the rate of attention he received was not often enough. There were difficulties transferring his medical records from London to Leeds, as well as the distance of his nurse buzzer from his bed to his bedside table being too far. She does claim that at one point she received a call from Doom in distress with the swelling of the throat. He had to call her to call the hospital to get the attention of the nurses because he couldn't reach that buzzer. There was an incident that occurred in which he tried to get out of his bed, at which point he collapsed and suffered respiratory arrest. And it was from this point in the next 10 days that he was on life support. Mind you, this was the peak of COVID at the time. She was not able to see him until the day he was taken off life support. In an update, sometime yesterday, representatives from the hospital publicly apologized to Doom's family and fans and acknowledged that the level of care that he received at this time was not up to standard, which, you know, duh. I mean, this is a really multi-layered and difficult thing to kind of think about because on one hand, you have the huge tax put on our hospitals and infrastructure is not built to be dealing with these kinds of disasters. And on the other hand, this is an instance in which it was completely preventable. And it really continues to ratify and add to the stigma that Black people in general have about going to and seeing and trusting their doctors and hospital staff. All in all, this is a pretty tragic thing to have to rehash. And though this information, you know, does feel important in a way, this is a great opportunity to respect the privacy of his family, his children, and simply put, rest in peace to Doom. And it's sad to know that his final days were in such discomfort and distress. On a much brighter note, it was just last week we were talking about MF Doom for an unreleased and unfinished song that mysteriously made its way onto the internet. It was an MF Doom song featuring Mr. Fantastic, produced by Madlib. If you want to check that out, I got a link down in the description as well as everything else we talk about in this video. The remaining two members of the Tempe, Arizona rap trio known as Injury Reserved announced this week that they will go on as a duo by the name of By Storm. As many IR fans already know, Steppa J. Groggs, one of the group's two vocalists, also tragically passed away in 2020. And this spurred the subsequent release of By the Time I Get to Phoenix, which is now the closing chapter of Injury Reserve as we know it. The group name By Storm is in reference to the final track on By the Time I Get to Phoenix, which features a bittersweet score of guitar cries sampled from a great Brian Eno song, Here Come the Warm Jets. Next week, they will drop a music video for By Storm, their final song and chapter as Injury Reserve. They will also be dropping a new single and video under this new name By Storm. The song is called Double Trio. Now, like I assume for many of you, I'm very excited to know that this duo will be sticking together, that they'll continue to create music together and under a new lens of which that will allow them to move forward in a way that feels right to them. I do want to apologize, by the way, because every story I have here is about death, things being over, ending, and in the past. But Shabaka Hutchings, who is a current modern face of jazz music, announced that he will no longer be playing the saxophone. He's going to be putting it down for personal reasons. He also reiterated his intention to retire the groups that he's been in, as well as he's working on a solo album, but wants to play his other instruments like the flute. Now, he also mentions that he does have a few more shows set to round out the end of the year that he will be performing on the saxophone. Namely, I wanted to mention he'll be filling in the part of Pharoah Sanders and playing alongside Floating Points to perform their album Promises on stage, which, by the way, still bangs. Still a really great album. If you haven't heard it in a minute, I suggest you give it a spin. We do have a couple condolences to send out this week, namely Coco Lee, who was one of China's most prolific and decorated recording artists, passed away this week at the age 48. She was very well known for her music from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, as well as playing the Mandarin voice for Fa Mulan. She had over a 30-year career in which she performed and wrote many hit songs in English, Mandarin, and Cantonese. She was a judge on many singing competitions and a widely recognized figure with a really interesting life story. She was once a pre-med student at the University of California, Irvine, and later, after moving back to Hong Kong, she became the first Chinese singer signed by Sony Music and the first Chinese American to perform at the Oscars. Coco Lee did suffer from depression, and after a pretty steep decline in her mental condition, it was confirmed that she did take her own life, aged 48. MDot EBK was an 18-year-old Bronx native and drill artist well on the rise with several popular songs and videos on YouTube, and he was killed in a drive-by shooting this week. MDot was off to a pretty strong start in 2023 with his hit single Off the Mud Part 2 featuring JB Sleaze and Eddie G's, currently with well over 5 million views on YouTube. He even, just last week, 7 days ago, released a new song and video. The music scene in New York, at least as far as hip-hop concerns itself, feels revitalized in a way it had longed to be for well over a decade to this point. And even then, with all the attention and all the trends that New York is responsible for right now, the living conditions and life inside many New York neighborhoods are completely devoid of peace. Again, we as the masses seem to do so much consumption of New York trends, culture, fashion, music, and so on. And we do this without genuinely acknowledging the real world circumstances that come into play that make the music and the trends and the stuff that we love. A couple of videos I wanted to suggest that you watch. Conductor Williams, who is one of my favorite Griselda producers, breaks down one of my favorite Griselda beats, the very simple but very, very effective approach he brings to putting beats together and pairing them with a particular artist. But the other video I wanted to show you is from the other Dev on YouTube. That would be Dev Limes, who is a YouTube content creator, but also a musician. She recently went on tour with the band Half Alive and Tessa Violet. Watch this and listen to her explain why the future of live music, of performing, of touring is looking pretty bleak. She does a really great job explaining the financial burden of going on tour and some of the misnomers that you hear as artists, like artists don't make a lot of money from streaming. They make money from touring and merch. But the reality is, even the artists we know and love and buy their albums still have a hell of a hard time trying to just break even in going on tour. If you're interested in that sort of thing, you know, something we talked about last week was the many concert cancellations that we've seen in recent weeks. I guarantee you the reasons for each one of those cancellations is very pertinent to a lot of what she's talking about in this video. Highly recommend that. We do have some album announcements now that we are putting on the screen, and you'll notice I also have in bold some of the ones that I particularly am excited to be listening to. So we got an Aphex Twin EP, we have the sophomore album by Genesis Owusu. We got a gauntlet of exciting September releases from Jeff Rosenstock, Slow Dive, James Blake, Olivia Rodrigo, and Chai. I'm really interested to know what on this list you're most excited to hear, anything that surprised you, anything you're really looking forward to. Please let us know down in the comment section, especially if we missed anything, and we will add it. But that's it for this weekly roundup of music news. Again, I'm Devon, and all you need to do to help us with this video is click the like button. If you want to keep up with future videos from us, then definitely hit that subscribe button, and we also have all our socials linked in the description below if you want to keep up with the album reviews and our day-to-day content. We will be back again next week, so until then, stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.